And welcome to the Comeback Kid. Good morning, everyone. I am your host, Ben Friedel, and alongside me, as always, Nate Wiggins, Matt Hendrickson. What is going on, you guys? How's your weekend?
I had a good weekend. Matt was gone, so that was very nice. Michigan won. That was great. And yeah, I had a pretty good weekend.
I also had a great weekend. I don't know why you thought I was gone. I was here. Always am. Anyways, I'm thankful to the University of San Diego for sending me up to my stomping grounds, Orange County.
On Friday, that's right.
On Friday.
Yeah,
Friday. Is Friday part of the weekend, Nate?
In a way, yeah.
Okay, I'm cool with that.
Anyway, so what were you doing up in Anaheim?
Yeah, so I got to tour the Anaheim Ducks facility, the Honda Center, and speak with some of their marketing department people and their fan development as part of a kind of just a trek to see what it looks like to work in the sports industry. That was the first stop, and our second stop was LAFC, the up-and-coming MLS club, and let me tell you, there's a lot to be excited there.
Yeah, even though we're in San Diego, and San Diego is obviously such a huge sports rivalry with Los Angeles, you know, if Soccer City doesn't end up working out and we just don't get a soccer team, LAFC might be the way to go because their stadium looks like it's going to be a full-on luxury resort, almost.
I would just like to point out that there is already a soccer team in Los Angeles that has won 5 MLS Cups.
Yeah, 5 MLS Cups out of how many teams? Like 20? Yeah, that's something.
Anyways, well, I'll speak to what I did this weekend a little bit. So I was out Catalina Island, which is off the coast of San Diego, Los Angeles area, about 20 miles off the coast, and I had no cell phone service. I was at a Christian retreat through an organization on our campus called InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, and I was on a retreat. It was a great time. However, I had no service, and so I wasn't able to necessarily know what the heck was going on in the world of media and the world of sports. I literally came home and I was like, Mom, did anything crazy happen? Because if something happened, I would have had no idea because I really just didn't have any service. So gonna have to help me out a little bit, guys, this week. A little bit out of the loop, but I think we'll make it work. So before we dive into it, let's just kind of go over what this show is about. So every single Monday at 9 a.m., we hope to talk about sports and stories that may not get enough attention on major sports networks. This includes soccer and LA Galaxy, as Nate likes to sometimes do, and Matt and I have mixed feelings about that, but it's all good. We also like to address baseball. We're going to do that a lot on today's show. We're going to go over our first official off-season preview segment, what moves are going to happen, which ones aren't. We'll let all of you guys know what's going to be going down, and as well as hockey and a variety of other sports. So, but most importantly, we want to talk about sports that we want to talk about because the vicious cycle of ESPN and the NFL isn't always the most entertaining subject. So we hope to bring light to other sports. So I think before we dive into our hot stove segment for this coming baseball offseason, I think it's important to acknowledge, the man Roy Halladay and who he was and what he meant to the world of baseball. Roy Halladay, former pitcher for the Toronto Blue Jays and the Philadelphia Phillies, passed away this past week in a plane crash over the Gulf of Mexico, and this one really hits home because he was a pitcher within our own generation. I mean, we've heard of pitchers and athletes passing away, but often they're before our time, but he was one of the very first pitchers I remember watching and thinking, dang, in his prime, one of the greatest I have ever seen. So guys, what do you have any specific memories of Roy Halladay that really stick out to you?
I think he's almost a little bit before my time in terms of actually getting seriously involved and watching baseball and knowing who it was that was pitching. I would say, though, anytime I turned on MLB 2K7, I got to see him pitch. I normally played against Toronto, and I got to see him pitch quite a bit. Just knowing, I don't know, it sounds kind of dumb, but that's kind of how I started to get into Roy Halladay. But we kind of still got to see him today, in today's game in some ways. A pitcher that we talked about a lot recently, Charlie Morton, kind of used Halladay's kind of delivery to reinvent himself. Charlie Morton was an aging veteran who never really topped 92 in the Pittsburgh organization, and then gets outrighted to AAA, signs a minor league deal with Houston, and coach says, "Yo, try what Halladay did," and all of a sudden he's throwing 97 as a 34-year-old. 1983, Ben. 1983. And I think that just shows how influential Roy Halladay's career was on what pitching looks like today.
Yeah, and a little bit of background about Charlie Morton. He closed out this year's World Series for the Houston Astros. He was a fantastic starting pitcher for the Astros, and the Astros saw something in him that a lot of other teams didn't, and I think we can really attribute that to Roy Halladay's success. But Nate, you have one specific memory in mind that really sticks out to you about who Roy Halladay was, both as a person but also as one of the greatest pitchers we've ever seen.
Well, I think if there's one thing that sticks out to me, it has to be the no-hitter in Game 1 of the 2010 National League Division Series. Just what a moment. And as soon as I saw the news of his death, that was actually the first thing I did. Is I went and I watched all 27 outs of that no-hitter. And there have only been 2 no-hitters in postseason baseball history. Him in 2010, and then Doc Larson of the Don Larson. I'm sorry, of the Dodgers. And I mean, just it's just so sad. A man who was absolutely beloved by everyone that he played with, was beloved in Toronto, was beloved in Philadelphia. To have him not be with us anymore is just, it's very, very sad, and it's very, very emotional for me. I loved watching Roy Halladay. He was, when I was younger, he was one of my favorite players. Even though he never played for the Red Sox, I absolutely loved watching him pitch.
Yeah, you got to see him quite a bit as a Red Sox fan going up against him, and when you went to Toronto and you had to go through Roy Halladay, and let's say you needed to sweep that series, there was a good chance you were not going to sweep that series because you had to go up against Roy Halladay one of those 3 days. For me, I would just say that Roy Halladay, what comes to mind is, again, that no-hitter. That was his very first postseason game that he ever played in, and he had gone his entire career after winning a Cy Young, and he was like the pitcher that was so great, but he always was on bad teams, and he had finally gotten on a World Series contending team in the Phillies, and it was his first postseason start ever. It's kind of like what we're waiting to see with like King Felix in Seattle. Like, he's been on these terrible Seattle teams, but for so long he's been such an elite dominant pitcher. It's like, what would he do in the postseason with the kind of competitor he is? Same thing for Roy Halladay, and it was almost magical in that moment that he went out and just completely dominated to the nth extent and was just so elite in that game. What I will say about how I was feeling in the moment, if I'm being quite honest, and I was speaking with Nate about this, it didn't hit me that hard. Although his death is completely sad, and I acknowledge that it was just horribly sad, I think that the death of Jose Fernandez a few years ago, the death of Yordano Ventura, the death of Oscar Taveras, and all of these baseball players over the past couple years has made me numb to this. It's just, it's made me feel like, it's just another baseball player. When in reality, he, like all the other players I mentioned, it's just all just horribly sad. And, Matt, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think what you just rattled off a lot of young names where we're going to ask ourselves for a long time what they could have been. What Jose Fernandez could have been, what Yordano Ventura could have been, what Oscar Taveras could have been. We know what Roy Halladay was. He was a Hall of Fame pitcher. I think both in Roy Halladay's case and Jose Fernandez's case, when I saw the news firsthand, I thought there's got to be this has to be a mistake. I know especially for Halladay, there were stories circulating that this plane was registered to his dad. It was just a one person was identified as was killed in this crash, but they didn't know who it was for a while. It's like, oh man, there's a chance that it's not him. Which, I mean, a death is a death, but I think I was definitely shocked, and especially in the circumstances, you don't necessarily expect this to be happening, and I think it's just a sad scenario.
Yeah, definitely a sad day in baseball, losing Roy Halladay, and all of our wishes to his family, and praise be to God that he has one of his children up in heaven with him now. So, very, very sad day there. Transitioning a tad, another player comparable to Roy Halladay's, I guess, status in the game is a player by the name of Carlos Beltran. Nothing bad has happened to him, we promise. But as of, 15, 20 minutes ago, Carlos Beltran called it a career. He has finally announced his retirement. He is, how old, Matt? 41 years old?
He's 40, 1977. Same age as Roy Halladay.
Yes, so he, at 40 years old, finally got the World Series that he wanted. He was one of the oldest players active not to have a World Series title. And so yeah, what a fantastic career. And I think we'll turn to you, Nate. What in the action of reminiscing, what was one of your do you have any memories of Carlos Beltran that really stand out to you?
Yeah, obviously the strikeout against Adam Wainwright in the 2006 NLCS with the bases loaded is something that sticks out. But I'm not here to dwell on the negatives of Carlos Beltran.
He's a World Series champion.
Exactly. So one thing that really sticks out to me was the 8 home runs in 2004. I mean, I remember he was just absolutely mashing the ball. The Cardinals could not get him out. He was just tremendous. And I mean, you could make an argument, or not make an argument. I mean, just his entire career in the postseason, he's just absolutely tremendous. So that's my memory of him, is just being one of the greatest postseason hitters of all time.
Yeah, I think for me, not only one of the best postseason hitters of all time, and I think he's one of the best switch hitters who have ever lived, and I think that's a dying art today. So we could potentially see Carlos Beltran as, when we look back 10, 20, 30, 50 years from now, as one of the greatest switch hitters who have ever lived. And back in the day when he could steal bases, he could play he was a tremendous outfielder. He was a 5-tool player, like all the way back in his Kansas City days. A lot of people forget that he came up with the Kansas City Royals back in the day. So a very great player. And similarly to Roy Halladay, I think we can all agree that he's destined for the Hall of Fame as well, especially now that he has a World Series to his pedigree, and that now we won't look so heavily upon the bases loaded strikeout that defined much of his career.
Well, I think if he had retired 4 years ago, at the end of maybe 2013 when the Cardinals lost the World Series to the Red Sox, I think if he had retired then, he would have been a surefire Hall of Famer. And I think that now getting this World Series just puts the cherry on top.
Definitely. So, congratulations to Carlos Beltran for a fantastic career. We wish him all the best in his future endeavors. And now it begs the question of, when talking about Hall of Fame, talking about awards, the award nominees have been announced. Many have actually been decided in terms of Silver Sluggers and Gold Gloves in the major leagues, but a lot of award nominees have been announced in the game of baseball. So, all right, guys, we're gonna do a little activity here. So I'm gonna give you guys the nominees for each of the major awards that have been decided in Major League Baseball. The results of such awards in real life will be announced 1 or 2 weeks from now, and it's our job to give our listeners who we think will win. And so if you could give us your best prediction for who's going to win each award. But if there is someone that you think got robbed from this award, feel free to openly speak. And you're already laughing, Nate, so let's just start with the NL MVP. The candidates that were eventually decided are Giancarlo Stanton of the Miami Marlins, Joey Votto of the Reds, and Paul Goldschmidt of the Arizona Diamondbacks. Nate, who should win this award?
None of the above.
Oh,
Nolan Arenado should be a finalist, and it is an absolute travesty that Nolan Arenado is not a finalist. I think that he is the MVP, and the fact that he is not even in the top 3, he's not even a finalist, is an absolute disgrace to Major League Baseball.
I think it's just more of a testament to how great the MVP candidates are in the National League. Paul Goldschmidt is on this list. I would argue he wasn't even the best player on his team. I think J.D. Martinez needs to be in contention for this MVP award, even though he split the season between Arizona and Detroit. But I mean, he's torrid, and he's going to get a lot of money this offseason. I think J.D. Martinez should win the NL MVP. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, I think I would go with J.D. Martinez. I think there is a construct in the major leagues based on tradition that players who switch leagues and didn't play their entire season in a specific league are just immediately disqualified from an award. But if we want to determine the definition of value and what players meant to each team, if there was any doubt that the Diamondbacks would make the postseason and win as many games as they eventually did, all of those doubts were immediately erased when they went fairly early before the trade deadline and got J.D. Martinez from Detroit. And it quite possibly could have been one of the greatest trade deadline acquisitions ever with how amazingly he just went off in the postseason. So that would have been my pick. I mean, I think we can speculate all we want as to who should have won this award, but I don't think that's taking away anything from the three players that were actually nominated. I think all of them in some form or another were deserving. So that begs the question, guys. Out of the three I mentioned previously, Giancarlo Stanton, Joey Votto, and Paul Goldschmidt, who do you think will end up with the award?
I think it's Paul Goldschmidt.
Really?
Just because when you look at the start of the season, like the Arizona Diamondbacks making it to the playoffs, like what? Mm-hmm. Like I think there's just a culture of winning there now, and I think that this team can sustain their success, and I think a lot of it stems back to their superstar.
What about you, Nate? How do you feel?
I would go with Giancarlo Stanton. I mean, what is it? 59 home runs, I believe. I mean, just absolutely tremendous. 59 home runs particularly in the era that we live in today, of some pretty dominant pitching. I think 59 home runs is truly a testament to how great of a player Giancarlo Stanton is. And even though the Marlins did not make the playoffs, I don't think that you can take that away from Stan and the tremendous season that he had, and I don't think that you can hold that against him, saying like, oh, you had a great season, but the talent around you wasn't good enough to make the playoffs, so we're going to give it to somebody else. I think that Stan was truly the most valuable player.
Yeah, and I think that same argument can really be made for Joey Votto, the Prince of Process, as he is so eloquently crowned in the spheres of baseball and baseball commentary. What I will say about Joey Votto, I heard a very compelling argument from president of the Joey Votto fan club, Brian Kenny, the other day when he was speaking with Mad Dog Russo on MLB Network, saying how Joey Votto, again, like you said, Nate, shouldn't be discriminated against in this voting for this award just because his team as a whole was not very good, and the Reds were one of the worst teams in baseball this past year, but he arguably, and he has an MVP under his belt already, and this year he arguably had a better year than that MVP season, and he led the league in OPS, and he led the league in runs created plus. So two very sabermetric stats, which are very indicative of a player's value. And if we were to go off of statistics like that, as well as the amount of run production he was able to create for his team, imagine how many games the Reds would have lost if they didn't have Joey Votto, right? Like, he is the sole purpose of what keeps that team afloat. That team just doesn't have any starting pitching to keep them in any games, and so I think a valid argument could be created for any of them. I would say who's going to win. I think Giancarlo Stanton. I think the fact that the three nominees that we have and Arenado is not on this list indicates to me that people gave their vote to Stanton over Arenado in order to get a first place vote. So I think Stanton's going to end up with it. I mean, 59 home runs is so hard to argue against, and again, any of these players are very deserving. So good luck to all of them. Moving on, AL MVP. I think we all kind of are at a consensus of this being a much easier decision than the NL MVP. I think the NL MVP is a very contested argument as to who could win, but AL MVP, your candidates are Jose Altuve of the world champion Houston Astros, Aaron Judge, breakout rookie, one of the greatest rookie seasons we have ever seen for the New York Yankees, and Jose Ramirez having a career year for the Cleveland Indians. A lot of people think of the Indians as the Francisco Lindor show. However, Jose Ramirez had arguably a better year than Francisco Lindor did and put up some monster numbers. So that poses the question to you guys. Who do you guys think is going to take home the AL MVP this year?
I think you got to go with Jose Altuve. I mean, just absolutely pretty much walked away with the batting title. And I mean, yeah, Aaron Judge had a great year with all the home runs, but I mean, wasn't he hitting like 175 in the second half of the year? I don't understand how you can give the MVP to a guy who was hitting I'm pretty sure below 200 the second half of the year, and was striking out. It seemed like pretty much every other at bat.
I know we normally don't like to agree on the show, but I think Altuve is a clear choice. I think that's what you're alluding to, Ben. I think the guy puts up 360 every year now, and just now 5'6" players hitting 24 jacks a year. Like, this guy is unreal. I'm really excited for the city of Houston to win this World Series, but I think they won the World Series because of their MVP, Jose Altuve.
Again, I would agree Jose Altuve should win this award. And I would pose the question to you guys, how many MVP awards would Jose Altuve already have if Mike Trout wasn't in the league? Right? Because he consistently has been either the second or third best American League player in the league. Second or third, I mentioned because Mookie Betts had a fantastic 2016, I believe.
Yes.
So he's been one of the top candidates in the American League every single year, and I think it is about time that he took home his MVP award because he is thoroughly deserving. So, moving on, I think we'll maybe hit these questions a little bit more rapid fire like. So, AL Cy Young, 3 amazing pitchers this season. I think when the season started, we thought Chris Sale was going to have this award locked down, but then who is one of the nominees for this award? You have Corey Kluber, who is another nominee, and you also have Luis Severino, who had a breakout year for the Yankees. So, who do you guys think is going to bring home the AL Cy Young award this year?
My heart says Chris Sale, but my head says Corey Kluber. I think that Chris Sale, towards the end of the year, had some kind of inconsistent performances. Meanwhile, Corey Kluber absolutely turned it on from pretty much mid-July through the end of the year. So I want to say Chris Sale, but I got to go with my head and say Corey Kluber.
Again, Corey Kluber, his consistency is unreal. I think this conversation would have been a little tougher maybe back in July or early August, but I think this has been wrapped up for a while. I think Corey Kluber is the most deserving player out of the category.
Definitely, and I also agree. Corey Kluber, I believe he's destined to take home his second Cy Young award. What a testament to him and his pitching ability. Former Padre Corey Kluber.
Yes.
Few people know that he was in the Padres organization and then was dealt for Ryan Ludwig of all players. Another Padre great, quote unquote. So, moving on, NL Cy Young, we have Kershaw, Scherzer, and Strasburg, 2 Nationals, which is a testament to how dominant their rotation was all year. And you also have Clayton Kershaw, who did happen to miss a period of time this season due to injury. So, it makes the conversation a bit interesting for this award. Who do you guys think takes it home?
Well, first off, I think we need to have a segment on the show sometime soon about what team the Padres could have right now.
Oh my gosh.
Because it's sad. It really is. Anyways, I think Max Scherzer gets it again. Just another freak. I think both Kluber and Scherzer are freaks in their leagues. They're just so good. I don't see this going to anyone else.
I can't believe we're agreeing this much. This is so nice. Yeah, I'd have to go with Scherzer. Just absolutely dominant. One of my favorite pitchers. Not only in just how dominant he is, but just his presence on the mound. Very intimidating. You look at him and you see the 2 different colored eyes, and it's kind of scary, but also just striking fear into the hearts of batters. He's one of my favorites, and yeah, I think that he deserves to win the Cy Young.
I know you want to talk about a pitcher comparable to the ability of Kluber, but polar opposite personality-wise on the mound. Max Scherzer is an animal. He's screaming on the mound. He's apparently he's just like cussing nonstop when he's pitching. And Corey Kluber, his nickname is Klubot because he never shows any emotion on the mound in his post-game interviews. I've been told he's funny, but we'll never know because he just is stoic and just completely emotionless on the mound, which I think serves as his benefit. But yeah, future congratulations to Max Scherzer, who I believe will take home this award. And his also would be his second Cy Young or third? Second, right?
Second, yeah.
Second Cy Young, second with the Nationals. So another.
Then third, because I remember, didn't he win one with the Tigers?
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so then it would be third.
Third Cy Young award.
Yeah.
What that is a Hall of Fame type resume for Max Scherzer. So, moving on real quick here, I think it's very clear the Rookie of the Year conversation is completely wrapped up. We mentioned Judge is even in the MVP conversation. That tells us that there's really no other American League rookie that even came close. Benintendi had a great year. Judge, I believe, is going to lock it down, as well as Cody Bellinger in the National League. Cody Bellinger broke the national record of rookie home runs with 39. Very, very impressive. And Judge, we already were talking very highly of Judge. Hit tons of home runs this year. Finished with 52. Very, very impressive. And so, yeah, would you guys agree that the Rookie of the Year is pretty much wrapped up?
Yeah, I don't think there's any discussion here. I mean, I think a better question would be who else would be deserving of the Rookie Year in the National League. I mean, I can't think of a lot of names. Maybe Dusty Coleman.
Oh, no. That is
Josh
a joke,
Bell.
of course, everyone. Dusty Coleman was the 30-year-old rookie for the Padres.
Maybe Josh Bell or out of Pittsburgh. But, like, I think this is the most wrapped up this conversation's ever been. I must say, though, Aaron Judge is getting this award based off of half of a season of work. He had a really tough second half, but that just proves how torrid his first half was, that this is still end of discussion that he's getting Rookie of the Year.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up our major award conversation. Thank you guys for giving your insightful input, and it's going to be an exciting award season up and coming. So when we come back, we continue our baseball conversation with predicting what moves our team's going to make. The Dodgers just came off barely losing a World Series. How are they going to add on a fire sale in Miami maybe? We're going to be talking about all of that when we come back. Stay tuned, everyone.